Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee. Can I draw everyone's attention to page 3 within the agenda, which sets out details regarding fire safety instructions and the webcasting arrangements. So let's go to apologies for absence. We've had apologies received from Councillor Mrs. Vilma Wilson and Councillor Stuart Wilson and Councillor James Newport. We have substitute members, Councillor Mrs. Deborah Squires-Coleman for Councillor Mrs. Vilma Wilson and Councillor Lisa Newport for Councillor Stuart Wilson. So thank you to both of you for attending this evening. I'd just like to say also thank you to the other officers for attending this evening. And if we can just explain who everyone is. So we've got Janine, our independent advisor. We've got Mike Porter. We've got Andrew, Aaron, David, and Elizabeth from our company that's leading our audit, Ernst & Young. Is that correct? Okay. So welcome to you all, and welcome to members as well. So can we go to the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of February 2025? It seems a long time ago now. Can I just ask, are there any queries with those minutes, members? Therefore, do we agree those minutes, members? Okay, thank you. Okay. So we move to item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest in any of the items on the agenda this evening? That's a no. Item 4, public questions on notice. None have been received. Members, before we proceed any further, I'd like to recommend the following changes to the agenda which was published. Item 13 to be discussed after item 5, and item 10 to be discussed after item 11. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Ward. Do we now vote? No? Okay. So moving on to item 5, membership of the Standards Subcommittee. Members, we will now consider the report of the Monitoring Officer relative to the members of the Standards Subcommittee. So I hand over to Claire Mayhew, who will present this report.
Thank you, Chair. I can update the committee since the publication of the agenda. Under paragraph 1.3, the Liberal Democrats have nominated Councillor Matt O'Leary. I've got nothing else to add, but happy to take any questions.
So do we have any questions, members? And am I right in thinking at this meeting this evening, Claire, we need to decide the chair and the vice chair of that subcommittee?
Yes, I can confirm that. That's in recommendation 2.
Okay, right. So we will now vote on the recommendations. Okay. So recommendation 1, then we'll discuss recommendation 2. I think we need to take each of them one by one this evening for this portion. Okay. That the membership of the Standards Subcommittee compromises of the following: 6 members of the Council representing each political group on the Council. The Council's 2 appointed Standards independent persons, currently Mr. Peter Scott and Mrs. Caroline Penny, without voting rights. And that there should be 1 parish and town council representative, again without voting rights. So do we go to a seconder? Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Milne. So that's seconded by Councillor Milne. Can I have a show of hands for all those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Okay, then we go to recommendation 2. That as part of the establishment of the subcommittee, the committee appoints its chairman and vice chairman for the 2025-2026 municipal year. I would like to nominate the 2 following people, 1 for chair and 1 for vice chair. I would like to nominate Councillor Eaves as chairman, and I'd like to nominate Councillor Ward as the Vice Chair. So, do we have a seconder for the Chair of this subcommittee being Councillor Reeves? Thank you, Councillor Milne. Do we have a seconder that the Vice Chair of this subcommittee should be Councillor Ward? Thank you, Councillor Marriott. Okay, so we'll vote for the Chair, Councillor Reeves. All those in favour of Councillor Eaves being the Chair of the subcommittee, please raise your hands. All those against? And all those that choose to abstain? Thank you. So that was 1 abstention and 6 in favour. Moving on to the Vice Chair. All those in favour of Councillor Ian Ward being the Vice Chair of the subcommittee for this municipal year, please show your hands. So again, that's 6 in favour. All those against? And any that choose to abstain? And that's 1 abstention. Moving on to recommendation 3. That Councillor James Hedges be appointed to the Standards Subcommittee as the Parish and Town Council representative, and Councillor Rosalind Efti be appointed to act as a substitute with non-voting rights. All those in favour of this recommendation, please raise your hands. So that's 6-4. All those against? And all those that choose to abstain? Yep. Okay, so it's 7-4, sorry. Thank you. So all those recommendations are carried. Thank you, members. So, jumping to what was on item 13. So, Elizabeth doesn't have to stay for the entirety of the meeting, because I'm sure she's got better things to do with her life. So, item 13, the Externate Audit Plan 2024 to 2025. Members will now consider the report relative to the External Audit Plan for 2024/2025. Elizabeth Jackson from Ernst & Young will present this report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, committee. Quick introduction to myself, as it's my first audit committee. I'm the new partner in charge of the Rochford District Council audit for 24/25 onwards. I've been working at EY for a number of years and signed audit reports for a long time, so kind of fully aware of the local government and have always been in this sector throughout my entire career. This before you tonight is the audit plan for the 24/25 audit. For those eagle-eyed will know that the council published their financial statements yesterday, which was the day of the deadline, and have started the public inspection period today. So all of that has been met for the deadlines the council was required to do. This is then obviously the audit plan related to those financial statements. For those of you who've been in the committee previously, obviously the disclaimer is continuing at this current time. We will be auditing the 24/25 accounts in full, but obviously we won't have the assurance over the opening balances. The LARIG has just been issued, which is basically the guidance of how we start that rebuild process, was published by the National Audit Office earlier in June. I forgot it's 1st of July. So therefore the firm is currently working through that as to see how and when we can be able to rebuild those balances to get back to an unqualified audit report. But for now, I'm presenting this plan on the basis that we'll be auditing the 24/25 accounts, but it will still be a disclaimer at the end of that process. So quickly just taking you through the executive summary. We've got the 2 fraud risks that are the management override of controls and the revenue recognition risk linked to the capitalisation of revenue. They are standard fraud risks in all audit plans within the public sector and, to be honest, the corporate and third sector as well. So there's nothing particularly worrying about the Rochford District Council or the management of it. It is just the standard risks that we always carry out. We've also got 2 inherent risks around the valuation of property, plant and equipment and the valuation of the pension liability. And then there is a new risk for 24/25 linked to the introduction of IFRS 16, and that's all around the new arrangements for lease accounting within your council's accounts. And we've just made that an inherent risk, just so we understand the processes that management's gone through to identify those leases, and we'll carry out testing of those to ensure they're categorised correctly. Value for money work, that is in progress. We've started the planning, but we haven't got to the position where I can issue any risks, but I'm not aware of anything sat here tonight in front of you that there are any risks arising at this point in time. And we'll obviously update you if those arise at the next committee meeting. Materiality is currently set at the prior year financial statements in this plan, but it will be updated for the year-end audit, which is planned currently for October to December. We're doing an interim audit in July 2025 to undertake some of that sample testing, so then finance can find the evidence, load it onto our portal, so when we arrive in October, that lots of the samples are already there, ready for us to work through. And that's probably all I was going to say on the report, and then to welcome any questions from members.
So members, are there any questions? Elizabeth, can I just ask, it sounds like some of those lines of inquiry are prescribed by powers greater than us. Am I right in making that assessment?
For the risks, yes. So the two fraud risks are kind of standard in all audit plans, regardless of the sector. If you have capitalisation of revenue, it's because you have a significant asset base and you have a capital programme, and therefore there is the risk that management, if you wanted to ease pressure on your revenue budget, you then capitalise revenue to ensure that your year-end position is more favourable to you. That is a risk in all organisations that have a capital programme and isn't specific to Rochford. What you will note is that your valuation of property, plant and equipment, depending on the asset base, sometimes that is a significant risk for some authorities, but for you, because of the nature of it, because of the previous findings from obviously my predecessor, Debbie Hanson, we haven't found any significant issues in your property, plant and equipment, and therefore I deem that you can be at an inherent risk level and not at the highest level that you might be.
And then just regarding the pensions, is that again determined by people greater than us? Or is it a common theme with local authorities?
That again is a common theme in local authorities. It's a high, both the PAYE valuation and the pension liability valuation, they're highly complex figures within your financial statements. You use experts as the council to be able to prepare those figures in your financial statements, and depending on when we get to the detailed review of the accounts, if there's something in them, I also use specialists for both pensions and PPE, because they require a lot of estimation technique, a lot of judgment, and kind of more skills than even I sat here today have.
And my last question, Elizabeth, for all the millions of viewers we've got this evening, what is the process of reporting progress against those 4 areas to members?
So the results of all the work that we undertake for the financial statements, regardless of whether they're risks or just findings in general from the financial statements audit, they will come to you in the audit results report. That will be likely in the December, because the audit, the accounts period is running October to December, and therefore that will come to you in a December committee. What we will do, obviously, in September for that committee will be if you'd like, a progress report or just a verbal update from me to say where we are, what we found in the interim, and if there's anything arising from it.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. So just once again, members, does any other member have a question? I take that as a no. Well, thank you very much for your report, Elizabeth, and you are free to go. So we move on to item 6, members. Establishment of the Constitutional Working Group. Members, we will now consider the report of the Monitoring Officer relative to the establishment of the Constitutional Working Group. And once again, Claire Mayhew will present this report.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to add that the membership will not be taken this evening. Group leaders will be contacted about their nominations, and these will be circulated to the Audit and Governance Committee. Nothing else to add, but happy to take any questions.
So just to clarify, this isn't a new group. It's a group that's been meeting for the last couple of years.
Yes, that is correct, but the membership may want to change for this municipal year. It has been meeting for the last definitely 2 years, cross-party.
Does any members have a question around the establishment of the Constitutional Working Group, or really the continuation of the Constitutional Working Group? Okay. So Claire looks forward to seeing who's going to be on that. Which people the Constitution really floats their boat for. Okay. So we now... Oh, sorry. Hello, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. So I note that it says 6 members, and I know that you said that the group leaders have been asked for the nominations.
Not at present.
Well,
They will be, yeah, after
so
this
then
meeting.
that will potentially be 1 member from each political group then?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yes, so very similar to the standard subcommittee. Okay, Councillor Newport, thank you. So we're going to go to the recommendation with regards to the Constitutional Working Group. One recommendation that the committee appoints to Constitutional Working Group of 6 members, 1 from each political group, as set out in the report. Do I have a seconder for that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Ward. We will now vote by a show of hands. All those members in favour of supporting that recommendation? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. Moving to item 7. Local Code of Corporate Governance and Annual Governance Statement 2024 to 2025. Members will now consider the report of the Monitoring Officer relative to the Local Code of Corporate Governance and Annual Governance Statement 2024 to 2025. The appendices were circulated separately, and I hope that you've all had a chance to read them. Once again, Claire Mayhew will present this report.
Thank you, Chair. I present to you this evening a revised Local Code of Corporate Governance. This is set out in accordance with the SIPFA framework, and the code defines the arrangements and evidence the Council has in place against the SIPFA's 6 principles of good governance. The annual governance statement details the Council's assessment for those how we deliver against the Local Code of Good Governance. This includes the actions from 23-24, which has now been completed, and the actions we're looking for from last year, 24-25. It is a RAG rating, and that is demonstrated how we comply with the principles. Happy to take any questions.
So, does any member have any question regarding to the Corporate Governance and Annual Governance Statement? Okay. Yes, Janine.
Yeah, sorry, it's not really a question. It's just on the actual corporate governance framework on page 6, and I think it's a little bit later on in there as well. You've got 3 lines of defence, and it actually says first line of deference. It should be defence. That's in the appendix. So it's a little bit of a typo, that's all.
So we have a spelling error. Okay. Yes. Yep. Okay, thank you. Thank you for those eagle eyes there. Thank you very much. Many a secondary school would hire an English teacher, you know. Right, let's move to the recommendations. Okay, so just be clear what we're voting on. Is it okay, members, if we take them together? Yep. Okay, so recommendation 1, that the annual governance statement 2024-2025 attached in Appendix A is approved and signed by the Chief Executive and Leader of the Council. And recommendation 2, that the committee approves and adopts the Local Code of Corporate Governance as set out in Appendix B. Do I have a seconder for those 2 recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Milne. We will now vote with a show of hands. All those in favour of adopting recommendation 1 and recommendation 2. That's unanimous. Thank you, members. We now move on to item 8, Treasury Annual Report 2024-2025. Members will now consider a report of the Strategic Director of Finance relative to the Treasury Annual Report for 2024-2025. Pleased to say Claire can take a rest, and we're going over to David Dickinson. This is your moment of fame, David, as you present the report to the millions observing.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to highlight a little bit the section 1.9. It's probably the key moment in the Treasury Annual Report, which is where rates started to go down and we managed to fix in a bit longer term, so it managed to keep the rates quite a bit higher. And that overall contributed, allowed interest to contribute 1.446 million against a budget of 0.650 million, which is about 800,000. And that surplus was a large part of the outturn surplus. It was about just over 1 million. And so it just shows the positive contribution from Treasury to the Council over the past year. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Councillor Ian Ward.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's on 1.10, 1.10, where we're seeing some of the maturity dates are due to expire. Are we looking to continue the arrangements with some of these councils?
Yeah, so over the year we'll monitor the interest rates, and base rate is coming off, but there's quite a lot of market turmoil currently, and it just has these little elements of or periods where rates go up and they go down, and we'll try and lock in higher rates. I think we'll probably struggle to get the 6% and the 5.65. Around about 4.5 is where we can reinvest currently. And the budget, we did increase it slightly, but it went up to about 850,000, and we're still on course this year to achieve, say, 1.2, 1.3 million. So it's definitely going to be, and interest rates are a big risk for this council, because you can earn quite a lot, but it can also drop away quite quickly. But we'll be currently monitoring that, and a lot of these rates are fixed for most of the year. And so probably we'll keep an average of about 4.5 or above for the year.
Thank you, David. Any other questions from members? Okay, so we'll now vote on the recommendation with regards to the Treasury Annual Report, that the report be presented to Council for approval on the 22nd of July 2025. Could I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Ward. And we will now vote with the show of hands. All those in favour of presenting the report to full Council? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, members. Moving on to item 9, Risk Management Update. Members will now consider a report of the Strategic Director of Finance relative to an update on the status of the Council Strategic Risk Register. Once again, David Dickinson will present this report.
Thank you, Chair. So just to confirm that CLT quarterly review the risks, and this report is generated from after that review. There remains one very high risk, which is the loss of data or network due to cyber attack. That's always going to be quite a high risk. There's a lot of, the report goes into quite a lot of detail of how we're looking to mitigate that, but it's a moving target, or we're a moving target, one of the two, and but quite a lot of effort is going into preventing that. There remain a few high risks, so financial sustainability. It's my role really to try and reduce that risk, but until we get a bit more certainty from the government, and things are looking to change quite significantly this year again, that will remain a high risk. But we're putting in by putting in a prudent budget, and by having quite strong, or very strong monitoring, we're able to at least maintain that risk. And recruitment, specifically in finance, there's quite a lot of work that's happening around recruitment, and in finance specifically, we've gone out to recruit just recently to try and get some more permanent members of staff. and the delivery of the playing pitch strategy, which has been refreshed. There's a new risk, so the council not having a local plan has been identified as a new risk, and this will be added to the risk register. Discussions with the administration will be held to identify the way forward in terms of managing this risk. And then, so that's looking at where we are currently, and then looking ahead, we're looking to develop the risk register a bit more. Speaking to some people, it looks sometimes it's going back to the way it was a little bit sometimes, which is around having a target date and a target approach to try and reduce the risks. And Zurich, the council insurers, are currently undertaking a risk management health check for the council, and there will be a report that comes out from that, and that will give us they'll have some input into how we can address the risk. And we're also looking at resources within risk. So it's quite stretched currently, and risk is a very important part. And there's various ways of saving money and just running a better council by managing the risk. And so we're just looking at the resources around there. But happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. Any questions from members? Councillor Ward.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's an observation more than anything else. At 1.5, the new risk, just prior, I did mention that because that wasn't in the table about the local plan. Obviously, that has been identified as a new high risk, and I'll be interested, in what the outcome will be in identifying ways forward with regard to resources and other things that are going to be looked at in this risk. So I do welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for that. Obviously, cyber attacks are on many people's minds. It's very disappointing when you can't get what you usually get from Marks and Sparks. So I think that's high on everyone's agenda. Also, my question is the local plan a new risk, or is it now an identified risk?
So it's a risk that we've identified to be added to the strategic risk, I think. So it's always been a risk, but this is now one of the key risks within for the council.
Okay, thank you, David. So the absence of a local plan has always been a risk, but it's now been recognised that is a risk. I think that's slightly different syntax there, isn't it?
Based on where we currently are now, so because potentially the local plan isn't progressing, then that's why it will be a big risk. But we need to identify what that actually means and the implications of that, which will be part of adding it to the risk register.
Thank you, David. I think what I heard there, it's always been a risk, but we've now identified that risk. And then just going to risk 20, it says the lack of 3G artificial grass pitches and sites in Brentwood, as identified through the play pitch strategy and the local football facilities plan. The council does not have a plan to meet this identified need. Well, it wouldn't surprise me if Rochford doesn't have an identified plan to meet the pitches in Brentwood. Yep. So does that need to be removed?
Yeah, I'll review it and remove it.
Okay, thank you very much. Although we can always go and watch the football there. Thank you. Members, are there any further questions? Nope. Okay. So, just like to remind members, this report is to note only. Thank you. So moving on to item 11, Internal Audit Progress Report, Q4 2024 to 2025. Members, we will now consider a report of the Audit and Counter Fraud Manager relative to the Internal Audit Progress Report of Q4. Mike Porter and Andrew Billingham will present this report. Well, don't take it personally, Andrew.
No, I won't.
But perhaps we'll hear from you later. Okay, Mike, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. If I can ask members to turn to page 55 of their agenda pack. So this report provides members with an update for the work of the internal audit team in terms of progress made in delivering the audit plan for 24-25. Since my last update, we have completed 4 additional audit engagements: planning enforcement, CCTV, property asset management, and we had a look at the Norse contract. With the exception of 2 deferred audit reviews, the audit plan is now complete. The overall assurance levels from those 4 audits vary. Adequate assurance was given to the Norse contract on property asset management, indicating that most key controls are in place and functioning effectively. Limited assurance was issued for both planning enforcement and CCTV, highlighting areas where controls are inconsistently applied and underdeveloped. I'd like to just give some key findings around those 4 audits, if I may. Planning enforcement. While the service has a solid framework, limited staffing and outdated procedures has led to delays in site visits and case closures. The current backlog stands at 408 active cases, the highest for over a decade. A review of KPIs and improved resource allocation is recommended. CCTV, operationally sound, but administrative gaps exist. These include outdated documentation, lack of formal training records, and missing data protection impact assessments. These issues pose risks to GDPR compliance and public transparency. Property asset management. The Council is transitioning from the former asset delivery programme to a new asset strategy and framework. While progress is made, delays in finalising the strategy and gaps in governance and reporting were noted. The strategy is now expected to be presented later this year. The Norse contract. The waste and street cleansing contract is generally well managed. However, performance monitoring for street cleansing is underdeveloped, and compliant response times have occasionally lagged due to resource constraints. Upon conclusion of the work, we've been left with 41 live recommendations, which will now be handed over to BDO to monitor. Whilst it's important to note the audit plan must be completed in order for me to provide an annual audit opinion at year end. And as I stated earlier, the audit plan is complete. I'm quite happy to take any questions.
Councillor Mrs. Lisa Newport.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, can you just go back to the CCTV in your report? You said it's operationally sound.
Yep.
And then what were the upshots about some improvement? You said something about some missing data forms, not GDPR compliant.
Data protection impact assessments and outdated documentation. And these pose risk in relation to GDPR compliance.
So if I may, just to confirm that. So that's the data protection impact system is not in place.
Impact assessments, yeah.
Impact assessments not in place.
Yeah. Well, when you put a new system in place or operational CCT, you do a kind of risk assessment, which looks at the risks posed in relation to data protection, and that's called a data protection impact assessment. So it's what you do with your data, how you manage it. So you do an assessment in terms of actually how we're going to handle that data. And what we found, there's a lack of those impact assessments being undertaken.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for your question. So my question is similar to the one I asked Elizabeth. How were these lines of inquiry determined? What made people think, let's really look at in detail at CCTV, for example?
Could you repeat that, sorry?
So how were these lines of inquiry? So how did an emphasis on CCTV and the other emphasis that we've had come about, Mike? Who determined that we should look at these things in detail?
Yeah, at the beginning of the year, we put forward an audit plan, which sets out all the audits we're going to undertake during the course of the year, and that's based on the Council's corporate risk and risk assessments. We then present that audit plan to the Audit and Risk Committee, outlining all the audits we're going to undertake, and all that work then builds into our annual plan, so I can provide an assessment of the Council's controlled environment. But it's formulated through conversations with officers, my review of the risk register, and that's how I put together an audit plan. That then determines what I'm going to look at.
So my question now, Mike, is how are members involved in determining that audit plan?
The audit plan is presented to members. They're not, essentially, we don't look for members to direct the audit plan, but we do actually present it and they will have a view in terms of what goes into it.
Okay, so we've presented the final product to make a comment upon.
The audit plan itself is presented at the start of commencement year before I start any work. So the audit plan for 24-25 would have been presented March 24. That sets out all the work I'm going to do from April 24 onward. That goes to committee. So,
Okay. Personally, I'd really like to see greater member involvement at an earlier stage with that process. So perhaps that's something, I don't know if we need to make a recommendation there regarding that, or we can just say it happens. I'm not too sure the etiquette in this situation.
I'm afraid to say that, yeah, this is my sort of swan song. I've now handed over internal audit reins to BDO, so they're now the new internal auditors.
Oh, thank you very much. That's going to be picked up. Okay. What a lovely gift to leave someone.
Thank you,
Yep.
Jeff.
Okay. Well, thank you for all you've done, Mike. I think you've got a little bit more to say, so I'll leave the thanks to that point. Okay. Members, Councillor Bob Milne.
Yeah, just a quick observation. The members did have involvement before the plan. We had things like a sum of money that kept recurring that appeared to be a debt year in year. It was about £700,000, and all that got resolved eventually, and that went back even before my time. So we did go through it, and as chair, no doubt you'll want to, as this evolves into the following year. And we'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Sounds like it's going to be exciting. Okay. Oh, just before we finish, I noticed you said, I think I heard there were 41 points of action. Is that right? From the various audits that took place?
Yes, upon conclusion of our work, we essentially had a handover meeting with BDO and we had 41 live recommendations. So the recommendations are yet to be implemented. So I've now handed those over to BDO to look after on my behalf.
What a wonderful Christmas. 42 gifts given to someone else. Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll be tracking those with great interest.
I've been very generous.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions? Nope. Okay. We move to item 10, Internal Audit Annual Report 2024-2025. Members, we will now consider a report of the Audit and Counter-Fraud Manager relative to the Internal Audit Annual Report for 2024-2025. Who's going to speak to this? Oh, Mike Porter will present this report.
Thank you, Chair. So based on all the work we've carried out during the course of the year, we then culminate that in terms of production of an annual audit report. So I'm pleased to present the summary of the Internal Audit Annual Report for 2024-25, which provides the Chief Audit Executive's opinion on the adequacy and effectiveness of Rochester District Council's governance, risk management and internal control framework. This year, this report reflects a comprehensive programme of audit work aligned with the Council's strategic risks and priorities. Internal Audit has completed 9 planned audit reviews, with 1 additional review that's added mid-year and 2 deferred audits. The work undertaken has been instrumental in providing assurance and identifying areas for improvement. Of the audits completed, 5 received an adequate assurance rating, indicating generally sound systems with some areas of improvement. 3 received limited assurance rating, highlighting more significant weaknesses that require management action. And 1 was an advisory review with no formal opinion issued. As previously stated, I handed over 41 live recommendations to BDO to be getting on with. In conclusion, the Audit Executive concludes that overall adequate assurance can be taken from the work undertaken. The Council's arrangements are fundamentally sound, though there are opportunities to strengthen governance and control processes further. In terms of counter-fraud activity, internal audit has continued to support departments in identifying and mitigating fraud risks. The Council also benefits from data matching through the National Fraud Initiative and the Pan and Essex Data Hub. Importantly, the Internal Audit Service continues to operate in line with professional standards. The most recent external quality assessment undertaken confirm full conformance with the public sector internal audit standards. I'm quite happy to take any questions.
So, any questions, members? Nope, doesn't look like there are. So, members, this report is to note only. Okay. So, moving on to item 12, Internal Audit Plan 2025 to 2026. Members, we will now consider a report of the Strategic Director of Finance relative to the Internal Audit Plan for 2025 to 2026. Aaron Winter will present this report.
Thank you, Chair. As this is our first meeting, I thought I'd do a brief introduction of who I am. So my name's Aaron Winter. I'm a partner here at BDO, and obviously we've just taken over as the internal auditors for the RIN tender exercise. So I will be the Council's Head of Internal Audit or Chief Audit Executive, depending on which one you refer to, and I also be taking up that role at Brentwood Borough Council as well. I've been providing assurance-related services to the sector for about 20 years now, and I'll be supported by my colleague Andrew Billingham, who will introduce himself when he presents one of the reports. So tonight we've got two reports to present to you, one being our proposed internal audit plan for 25-26, which I will take, and as I just mentioned, Andrew's got the pleasure of presenting our first follow-up report of those recommendations that Mike has referred to as being handed over to us and progress made to date. So starting with our first report, as I said, this is our proposed internal audit plan for the year, and it's being presented to you for review and approval. So this plan has been collated following a robust planning risk assessment, and it's informed by a number of key components. One of them was a thorough handover with Mike and his insight performing the work of the internal audit function to date, and looking at what work has been covered previously over the years and assurance that's been provided to ensure we do not offer any duplication. A review of the Council's plans, strategies, priorities and risk registers alongside the landscape that you're operating in as well, and then looking forward to see if any changes in legislation, regulation or, as we know, structure potentially going forward. And then an agreement of the plan and discussions with executive directors, and also leveraging the work that we've been doing at Brentwood Borough Council and looking at how we can align the plans together as well to ensure that we can offer a bit more of a wider viewpoint. But as this is our first year working with the Council, we are picking up a couple of areas that haven't been covered in previous years to ensure that we get our fundamental knowledge of the Council before we start to look at doing joint reviews. So as a result, and the way that we present our plan in our report here, we do structure it in a couple of streams of work as part of our next-gen internal audit approach. So we have core assurance areas that are fundamental in forming our Head of Internal Audit opinion at the year end. We also look to try and offer some flexible assurance, but also forward-looking assurance areas as well as things emerge. So what we've agreed today and we're presenting today is 9 reviews that we are suggesting to be covered next year, but you will also see we've offered some flexible assurance time, which is there for us to respond to any emerging risks that may occur during the year. And going back to the previous conversation about member involvement, this also includes if there are any concerns that are raised either now or during the year that members would like us to look at as part of the plan, we can do that as part of that time. And just to ensure that, obviously, we met as part of our introduction, the Chair and Vice Chair, recently as well to get their views and inputs into this plan, but that will be an ongoing discussion we will have as well. So ensure that we get the feedback from this committee via them as well. So what the final point I need to raise, and it's what makes this document quite long, is our internal audit charter at the end, which is in Appendix 1. So this effectively outlines our roles and responsibilities, but also the roles and responsibilities of all stakeholders, i.e. management and this committee, and how we deliver our work. And a significant change for this year is that there are actually new global internal audit standards. These have been applied globally because there wasn't a previously set of standards that were up to standard, for other sectors. However, as you know, work has always been conducted in the internal audit phase in public sector to the previous public sector internal audit standards. And what I can give assurance today is that those standards that were being previously applied to are pretty equivalent to the standards that have just come in as part of the global framework. So we've already reviewed our processes and controls as a firm and can confirm conformance, but as part of our delivery of work, we continue to report the conformance against those new standards. And if there are any changes in the way that our work's delivered, we'll report that as part of our progress reporting too. So I'm going to stop there on that first report before we move on to our next one for any questions.
So, are there any questions from members? So, I've just got a few, Aaron. So, when you say the word global, are we talking worldwide or a holistic cross-sector understanding? What's your understanding of the word global when you share that with us?
It is both. So we've been quite fortunate that there's been internal audit standards in the UK for public sector for some time now, but some sectors across the world and other countries haven't had those sort of standards in place. So that's what those new standards are attempting to achieve, consistency across the internal audit profession.
Very grand. Okay. And then we've heard about the 41 points for action that have been gifted to you so kindly. So do they appear in here, or where do they appear?
So they won't be they're not formally presented as part of our plan, but naturally they will be presented to this committee at each meeting as part of our follow-up programme of work. So you will see in the plan, actually, under our contract management, we have some time there that then enables us to do the follow-up of previously raised in recommendations and reviewing evidence to ensure that they've been implemented. So one thing I would say is that we will not report them as complete until we've seen that they are implemented and embedded.
Thank you. Councillor Milne?
Yeah, just a question in that each of the statements here in the risk assessments, red, amber and green, some of these things aren't so much bean counting issues, they're issues of actions which can result, failure to recruit, that kind of thing, failure to enforce GDPR rules and so on. Each one of those generates a kind of a work stream really in the organisation. Some of them probably don't need looking at much. They're ticking along. I know that there'll be nice ones sitting on the corner there. How do you get the feedback to show this? Because this is shown really as a kind of a spreadsheet really with a red, amber, green stuck on the end. But each one has, oddly enough, an uncertainty rule and a timeline inside it. So that's, do you actually task each of these things to get a response? It's not. I know it's not just a simple thing of looking through the books and doing double entry bookkeeping on this one. That's all I'll ask.
So one thing I would say is that these risks listed here are obviously the risks in your strategic risk register for the council, and they will change over time as well. So this is actually a point-in-time assessment. So what we will do is we'll continually review those alongside management to understand how you're progressing with those risks, and therefore do we need to look at them in the near or longer term future. So we are a finite resource, we can't look at every risk. So on an annual basis, when we come to this plan is a 3-year plan, but each year we will review that to see actually how have those risks moved. Is there some of them that are more prevalent to look at sooner rather than later? The other thing I would flag as well is that, and actually it was mentioned as part of the Code of Governance, you've got a 3-line of defence model, and we're that 3rd line. So by discussing with management and understanding where you are, your 1st and 2nd lines are giving some assurance that you're mitigating those risks and working on those. So then that means we do not have to look at those at that point unless something changes. So it's something that will be under consistent review by us alongside management and through discussion. So I can't give absolute assurance that there might be a risk that crystallises that we haven't looked at, but we'll do our best to ensure that we cover these key risks over the 3-year period.
Thank you, Councillor Milne, for your question. Thank you, Aaron, for your answers. And just want to reiterate that I think I'm clear in my understanding that the peer review that took place hasn't influenced any of these areas for action so far, because we've only recently seen the peer review. And I have no doubt, obviously I need to talk to my chairs in other committees as well, that there might be aspects of that peer review that strategic and finance might want us to look at in more detail in audit and possibly in scrutiny as well. So I think there might be some slight changes there, Aaron, once we've discussed that at full council on the 22nd of July, because obviously that's a significant piece of work that I'd hate to see just gather dust, that we should be acting upon some of those recommendations.
Absolutely, and one thing I didn't say is that this plan is completely flexible as well. So to the point of the risk point of view, but also as demonstrated from the previous internal audit work, you do have some shifts and movements in deferrals and cancellations because greater risk, or like you say, the peer review generates other areas to look at. So we're happy to take that feedback and work with the chairs of the committees, but also management to ensure that we're looking at the right areas.
My last question is really regarding pages 96 and 97. So we've got reference 11, risk 16. The partnership between Rochford District Council and Brentwood Borough Council fails to bring about the project benefits. So we don't see all the enhancements we thought we might see, I'm guessing there. But I think also it's linked to reference 17 and risk 24 about the whole devolution and local government reorganisation as well. It might be that we don't sustain a monogamous relationship anymore in that situation, and what's the dangers there as councils start looking to see what partnerships they want in the future. And I think that's a concern. We need to marry those two up as well, not just looking at Rochford and Brentwood, but we need to be looking at that in the context of local government organisation and the various models that are there, because 3 years is a long time, but things could be changing quite rapidly in terms of that partnership, I suspect, as councils start aligning with other councils to form new authorities.
Absolutely. And one thing in terms of the team that we're part of as well, we work with over 50 local authorities across the country as part of in an assurance capacity. So where we're seeing that movement might be occurring in different parts of the country as well, we'll bring that back and obviously discuss that and share that as thought leadership and benchmarking. I guess we're in a similar position to the council, management and members that we're waiting to see what that kind of progression and transformation looks like. But the one thing I can assure you is that, like with some of our other councils that we work with, this is prevalent on the plan either for this year or going forward. It's just a matter of how we can support along that journey as well.
Thank you very much. Before we leave this item, any other questions from members? Okay, thank you. So, I think we now need to vote on the recommendation. Recommendation 1, there's only one recommendation, that the internal audit plan as set out in Appendix 1 be approved. Okay, is that right? Oh, and I need a seconder for that. Okay, thank you, Councillor Myers. Okay, so Councillor Myers has seconded the recommendation that the internal audit plan is as set out in Appendix 1 be approved. Can I just ask a question, does it go anywhere else from here? It's just approved at this committee. Yep, okay. So all those in favour? So that's unanimous. Thank you very much, members. So now we move to item 14, committee work programme. Members will now consider the committee's work programme for 2025-2026. We've got another report, have you? Right. Oh, right, okay. Let's go to another report then. Okay. Oh, your moment of fame, Andrew. Nearly missed it. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'll just introduce myself. So my name's Andrew Billingham, so I'm the Internal Audit Manager, and I'll be managing the plan at Rochford. So I've been with BDO for about 2.5 years, and during that time I've managed the plan at Brentwood Council. Before joining BDO, I worked in local government for 20 years, so I've kind of audited all sorts of different kind of areas in local government, so I can utilise that experience to bring here. So the next report I wanted to talk about is the follow-up report on page 115. So this report shows the progress made in implementing outstanding recommendations. We only follow up high and medium priority rated recommendations because that's where the higher risk lies. We followed up 26 recommendations due this quarter. We've confirmed that 11 have been implemented and 15 have missed their implementation date, and they've now got a revised date. The ones that have missed their implementation date are classed as in progress, and you'll see in the table they are amber. And if they fail to meet the revised implementation date, they will be classed as overdue going forwards. But yeah, happy to take any questions on the follow-up report.
So just for clarity, members, I think that's Appendix B. So any questions from members on Appendix B? No? I don't think we're voting on that one, or even saying it's for noting only. Okay. Thank you very much, Andrew. So we move to item 14, committee work programme. Members, we will now consider the committee's work programme for 2025-2026. So what I'd like to do is just look at the meeting for September the 2nd. Obviously, it's a very fluid document, this. I think there's other things that will be added, especially with regards to the peer review and local government reorganisation, aspects of the various audits we've got going on as well. But is there anything burning that any of the members here tonight would like to see added to the 2nd of September? You can always let me know. Oh, yes, sorry. Councillor Ward.
Just a question. It's quite a long time till September. There might be items that come up. Can we add those as we go along?
Yes, I'm sure we can, and undoubtedly I think there are going to be things that need to be added. Obviously, they can't be added 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, but I'm sure we can add things as long as there's due notice of a month to 5 weeks before. Yeah. So should we say that 5 weeks before is the deadline for anything to be added in September? So, I mean, that's not actually that long now, is it really, if we're adding that bit in? So have a think about it. Okay. And then we'll just speak to January, and then we'll go through the other meetings at the end of September's meeting. So anything for January, again, if there's anything that we need to add, it's a very fluid situation that you can, and just to let me know, and we can add things to the work programme, because January seems quite light compared to September. Okay, yes, Councillor Ward.
Maybe we can adopt the same principle as for September to give a time limit to ensure that anything that needs to be added on can be notified to yourself, so we can add them on. Thank you.
Yeah, so if we could say the beginning of December for anything to be added on to the work programme that members wish to discuss in the January meeting. Councillor Mrs Newport.
Thank you, Chair. I know we're just discussing the January one, but in February you've got review of work and outcomes for the Mill Hall. I really think that maybe that should be pushed forward to January, because it's been going on for quite a long period of time. We've got review of work and outcomes for the Freight House in January. I really think maybe the Mill Hall should also be on that one. And just one question, in that bit where it says Phoebe Barnes, Director of Assets and Investments, question mark, I just wonder what the question mark is. Is it a maybe it's Phoebe, maybe it's not Phoebe?
Maybe Phoebe.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
thanks for clarification for that. Thank you.
Excited anticipation there, Councillor Newport. Yeah, I do agree with you. I think it would make sense to look at Mill Hall and the Freight House together, all those sort of asset things. And if we can move those to January, because January does seem quite a light meeting overall. So I think if we do move those, thank you for that suggestion. So we will have a look at the Freight House, Mill Hall. Any other assets members think we should be looking at detail? Please just let me know. Okay, with that change and suggestion from Councillor Lisa Newport, do we accept this committee work programme as it stands at this moment in time, knowing that there will be changes and amendments?
We can add something to January's meeting as well.
Yep.
So, do you want to do it?
I'll do an update on the actions from the annual governance statement halfway through, so we'll do an update then in January. Is that okay?
Is that certain, Claire, or we're going to have a question mark?
You can have that, it's certain.
Okay, well, I look forward to it then. So that's just for noting, members. Okay. So just like to conclude by thanking Mike Porter for all that you've done. Are you off to pastures new then, Mike, or?
I still have a day job where I work for Basildon Council. I've just really, said goodbye to Rochford, that's it. I still have an audit job at Basildon.
Well, we won't hold that against you, going back to Basildon. Yes? As long as it's not involved in local government reorganisation from some members' viewpoints, but we'll wait and see. Okay. That now concludes our business for this evening. The meeting lasted exactly an hour, and thank you for attendance.